What if Bella caught in triple-sided apocalypse, Part 1. January 14, 2016, 6 p.m. Start End Corp. Abbott. The biologist jumped, almost dropping the petri dish in his hands. Your report on the RFPZD strain was supposed to be on my desk hours ago. Where is it? I had to start over. Don't lie to me, Abbott. I've had to put up with your ass for 7 years and it's the same with you. When are you going to grow the fuck up and do what you're told? But supervisor, it's still inconclusive. Something went wrong and in order to give you an accurate report, I need to redo the experiment. What happened? The test subjects have died. What could have possibly gone wrong with the first batch then? I don't know, but I know that this strain can have a cure. She shook her head. I'll take care of it. You're hereby terminated, Abbott, she said, pushing a cardboard box into his hands. Check is in the mail. No, please don't do this to me. Only I can create the cure. Only I understand you can't do this to me. He yelled after her. Pack your things and leave immediately. Don't make me call security. The man's expression darkened as he watched the woman walk down the glass hall, high and mighty with her shiny red shoes and French twist. He angrily tossed his few belongings into the box. He looked at prepared virus that sat in the petri dish. As an afterthought, he put one of the test tubes containing the RFPZD virus into a capsule and put it into the pocket of his lab coat. December. He's gone. He's gone. Dear Alice, I don't know what to say and yet I have so much. The emptiness is crippling. It's hard to breathe, stand. It's just hard. It could be the end of the world for all I care. I love you, I need you, I miss you. With all my love, Bella. January. Losing Edward was awful, but remaining in their world is second best. Being totally shut out was much worse. I was never normal anyway. Normalcy isn't for me. I'll try to find one. Not just any mythological creature will do. I had started looking into recent murders where the victims had strange or unknown causes of death, and looked into the hunting rates from parks all over the country. I guess I was subconsciously thinking that I could know where they went. What I found instead were cases of people attacking others as if they were animals, mauling and biting their victims. I couldn't help but click on the video of the homeless man that attacked a jogger in Florida, ignoring its seemingly ridiculous title. At the same time, there was a disease now that was causing cats and dogs to die by the dozen. A dog owner was bitten and hospitalized, but she was exhibiting strange symptoms. February. Edward is gone. Edward's gone. I haven't been having much luck finding a vampire. It didn't help that the unknown disease outbreak was flooding the search results. People have been writing blog entries, making videos about theories, conspiracies that the outbreak was planned or was a terrorist attack. The people infected said they were in some type of crowded place before they got sick with flu-like symptoms. Some people have gone missing. Relatives filed missing person reports, but they were later found in a hospital, delirious with no memory. At the top of the results was tally of deaths, both human and domestic pets, ranking the countries infected with the highest number first. It was in densely populated countries and spreading fast. The subject was all over the town too. Everybody in school seemed to never tire of the prospect of the apocalypse being near. Missionaries preached on street corners that the apocalypse was here. But there was something promising. Supposedly a chupacabra-type creature was on the loose. There was a series of deaths all over the country where the victims were drained of blood. It increased my hope to finding another vegetarian vampire. There was also something about strange wildlife attacks on hikers. The hikers were missing people since March. I expected more from you, Alice. Edward allowed himself to suffer alone, and that's why he didn't think of me when he decided to leave. I thought we were best friends, Alice. Regardless of the reason, good to know it was easy for you to leave too. I had finally come to terms with it. I couldn't have managed the pain, the anger, or sadness without Jacob's friendship. I won't take back the way I used to be. I've become someone else. I've come to terms with that too, that I won't ever be the same again. I don't know what to live for anymore. I have to completely re-establish myself into the human world where vampires don't exist, but how can I when I know that they do and that our world is theirs too? I wish they were out in the open, they would be easier to find then. I was making dinner. Charlie, Billy, and Jacob were coming up. I washed the vegetables with the TV playing loudly so I wasn't immersed in silence, inviting unwanted thoughts in. Charlie told me to lock the doors because lately there was a lot of break-ins due to the panic caused by the number of deaths from the unknown virus nicknamed 28 days. After 28 days the human patients died, pets died faster. People were acting as if it were the apocalypse, looting, attacking people for no reason, and robbing. Forks, police force, security guards, and park rangers were working together with firefighters and volunteers to try to keep the peace and out of the forest, protecting them from infected wildlife. Crime rates skyrocketed in many places, but Forks is so small, and everyone knew that sort of thing didn't happen here. So town was scared. People were often hurt, sometimes fatally wounded, and it greatly saddened Charlie. It must be hard what with being the chief of police right now. It's a good idea to have a dinner party, for Dad to just be himself and be with friends. I left the front door open to air out the smoke from the burnt bread rolls I put into the oven to crisp up, for less than 5 minutes while I went to the bathroom. I came back, hearing groaning on the way, and froze at the sight of what I could only describe as zombies. From the back of the house, 3 others broke in. It was said drugs or 28 caused people to act like this, impulsive and cannibalistic. I may be no expert, but these people were not human. One of them had red eyes. Pieces of him weren't dangling off of his bone or rotting, but its skin had a light red hue. And that was when I knew that I was in trouble. I ran back up the stairs, aiming for my room, but they reacted quickly. While trying to get past each other, they pushed their way up the stairs. The red-eyed one was trying to pull the others back, ripping off pieces of them at the same time. He wasn't interested in their blood at all. I tried to keep them from biting me as I pushed them away, while trying to get away. Bella. It seemed like the illusion of the Edward who loved me came back at my time of dying. He pulled them off and twisted their necks until they snapped. How odd. Illusion Edward could never move from where he stood. Bella. Thank God. Are you all right? He could never physically. Bella. He said in a worried tone. I could feel his hands gripping my shoulders, I could see them. He couldn't possibly be really here. A phone vibrated that he picked up quickly. I got her in time. He suddenly grabbed my head and turned it in one direction and the other while looking carefully at my eyes. If I can feel him then. Do you have any cuts? I need to know. I shook my head slowly. She's clean, Carlisle. I know. I'll get ready. I screamed when he put his arms under me. No, you can't be real. I pushed him away, feeling how solid he was, and covered my head, not wanting to feel him. Bella, I'm so sorry. He gathered me in his arms and held my head to his chest as if to protect my mind. I am truly, very sorry, but we have to leave. I'm take you upstairs. We have to get you out of those clothes before you get infected. He said, carrying me up the stairs. I didn't say anything. I need you to change and pack what you can. Bella, are you listening? Can you hear me? I'm here. I'm sorry. I can't apologize enough. I promise, I swear I'm not here to hurt you more. Bella, we don't have any time. Carlisle, Emmett, Rosalie, and Esme went to find Charlie and take him to the Quileutes. Jasper stayed just in case. I recognized Alice's voice but said Charlie's name. It's all right, Bella, we'll find him. Let's get you ready. He put me back on my feet but kept his hands on my shoulders to keep my steady, while Alice rummaged through my drawers at lightning speed. What are you doing here? I said, not lifting my gaze from the floor to her. We came to save you. You don't care, I said, blocking her hands that were going to pull off the shirt I was wearing. That's not true. Did anyone from the Quileute reservation say that? She asked. No, they don't care enough to. I'm asking, what are you doing here? We came to save you. I know that we were gone. I know what Edward did and that it must have hurt, but none of us stopped loving you. We never would. How does that explain how quickly you all left? Couldn't wait to leave, huh? That's not, we left before we could convince ourselves to stay. I told them to go. Edward saw Ed. I was quiet for a moment then scoffed. You. I tried to look at him, but my eyes fell down to his chest. You must be so happy. I'm not. I was not for a moment since. Since you've been gone I've had to deal with a lot of shit, you know that. But I should thank you. I learned a valuable lesson. Mind over matter. Although I knew there was a possibility you would feel that way, and tried to prepare. I cannot deny it hurts. I'm sorry. I'll apologize every day. I can only hope the pain lessens. I daren't hope that you'll forgive me, but I can't live in a world where you don't exist. I want to keep you and your family safe. I owe you. Edward went into the hall and closed the door. Bella, I want you to know that I did miss you. You're more than just my best friend, you're my family. Edward is in more pain than he lets on. You would have had to seen to believe just how much. Alice, I don't know what's going on. Things are happening, and none of it makes sense and… Shish, don't worry, she said as she embraced me. We're not going anywhere, I promise. While I changed into thermals, 2 layers of jeans, and her leather jacket, she packed my school bag with underwear and shirts. These will do for now, but they can still be torn by them and anything. You can't allow any wounds to be exposed to the air. Carlisle has been keeping tabs on the outbreak, but there's not much to go on so far. I suppose we'll figure out more where we're going. To get Charlie. We treaded carefully down the steps, but jumped onto the first floor, skipping over the pile of bodies, myself in Edward's arms again. He smelled the same, wonderful, and for the first time in a long time I felt safe. We're going in your truck. Edward sighed. Alice rushed me to the back. Why mine? It's slow. A truck will come in handy later. They both pulled out the bodies and piled them on the road and set them on fire. Why did you do that? I asked. To keep the pathogens from spreading. Edward answered. It's been spreading via coughs and saliva so far. We aren't sure if the virus can get through the skin or infect someone via their eyes. What just happened did happen, right? There's real, fucking zombies. It just might be the end of the world as we know it. Edward drove my truck as rapid as it might pass down the street. Matters looked particularly ordinary. Every now and then vehicles surpassed in both course, however I did see one individual run up the street like he was being chased. Whilst we passed the corner, I became my head to trap Katie Marshall's residence. She might be at Newton's clothing store's store, it was her flip today. I did not have her wide variety to warn her and the Newtons. We weren't certainly close, at the least I wasn't to any of them anymore, however I nonetheless wanted to offer them a warning. As we drove close and in the direction of the thriftway, Edward, Alice, and Jasper noticed the graffiti. A few had been illegible, others stated, "That is the give up," and boarded up windows of each houses and stores. The coronary heart of the metropolis was typically pretty alive, however some weeks in the past, while the crime and panic started, human beings grew to become in earlier. A curfew wasn't implemented by the government, however cautioned through the information newshounds and adults. Absolutely everyone went domestic soon after sunset and called every other to ensure they got home. I had to name Charlie earlier than I left for college and after I got home. If he changed into running late, he'd take a look at in. He may want to regularly ought to stand shield at supermarkets, or smaller markets, and other establishments that decided to keep those ransacked at the same time as they had been open, boarded up their belongings and were nevertheless closed. At the thriftway lot, things have been completely one of a kind. People screamed as they ran, clutching something they may grab from the grocery shop, a few with their personal guns of their hands. All of the looters ran out screaming. Those making plans to move inside stopped and ran within the path they come from. People fell and have been trampled, a few have been attacked for their stolen goods. Then the things inside got here out and chased or pounced on the nearest man or woman, targeted with the intention of consuming the sufferer. An officer screamed at them to stop, gun pointed. A scream made my wide eyes dart to its source. The female screamed in ache, seeking to push it off, as it burrowed into her abdomen. Bullets have been shot, the popping sound rang in my ears. Oh my God, Alice said. Emmett and Rosalie are interior. Charlie's in there, Alice, name Esme. Edward, you gotta get Charlie. Live in here. He entreated and ran towards the thriftway, taking some of them out. Alice pulled the door close, however hissed. The lady simply laid there. Grr. Alice groaned and slumped back into her seat. Jasper sat huge-eyed, not breathing. I grew to become. What is incorrect? The blood, I can smell it. It is gonna be okay, he's going to be back. I stated, extra to myself than her. Humans kept running beyond our car. I jumped whenever someone ran over our vehicle. Alice stopped respiration and referred to as Esme. Things were not any higher on the health facility. They had been quick-staffed, despite the truth that most nurses have been on call, even with EMTs assisting. Now those EMTs needed to go away to come here, an officer had referred to as. The officers started out screaming on the people to chill out, to prevent going for walks and screaming so they might help the wounded. Are they adequate? I asked lowly. They're pleasant. They may be being careful of path. I advised Carlyle approximately the vampire that attacked you. He's confused approximately it due to the fact vampires don't have blood, the venom changes our DNA. However, I cannot locate whatever about it on the net. She said, her arms tapping on her telephone a bit too tough. They are saying it has flu-like symptoms, that it takes 28 days for it to get severe. And they both die, go right into a coma, or act wild. I intended whatever about what it is able to be. I failed to mean it like that. I recognize. A person banged at the window. Bella, are you okay? Charlie's voice was muffled. I jumped out of the car and latched directly to him. Are you good enough? I am satisfactory. Edward stated you had been attacked on the residence. I nodded. I'm best dad. Edward were given to me in time. I am actually glad he did. He stated, turning to have a look at him. I could inform Edward was additionally laid low with the smell right here. Rosalie and Emmett had gone into the auto to get away from it. But Dad, what befell here? I asked to distract Charlie from asking what I knew he was going to. I do not simply understand. I was right here seeking to maintain it from being looted and had to name back up, then all hell broke unfastened. Suddenly there was 5 of them. I have no idea what turned into incorrect with them, they would not pay attention. He stated, afflicted. Did you have shoot a person? He nodded. I do not assume any of you would love to help us clean up right here. Everybody within the vehicle shared looks, then commenced pulling their shears over their noses and tied their scarves over for additional measure. Ambulance sirens blared. We'll do our satisfactory. Edward sighed. We really recognize it. You have no concept. I have to cross. The EMTs are here. And he ran off. I pulled my scarf off and supplied it to Edward, meeting his gaze for the primary time. Thanks, Alice. Jasper, you stay in right here. Permits go. Taking walks to the supermarket, I watched an officer with an injured arm circulate the unhurt to the other side of the lot. Every other, at the side of the EMTs, moved the injured closer to the ambulances. Anyone cried and moaned, and screamed in ache while the EMTs assessed or moved them. Just holler in case you locate someone and acquire tins, something usable and something drinks you can discover. Water is like gold now, Charlie's radio chirped. Have been moving all and sundry to the college, and I mean anyone, at the least we will try. Meet us there. Copy. He stated. You all heard, be careful. You too, Dad. He hugged me fast and jogged to the opposite aspect of the store. We break up into businesses to cover more ground. The whole thing becomes spilled onto the floor. Jars had been broken, luggage popped, and all in their contents had been out. Edward pulled a purchasing cart right aspect up again, and we accrued bottles of water, juice, cans of meals that should were dropped once they seemed. It become obvious a number of the harm in here turned into caused by the combat over it. The shelf of baby components become nearly empty. Thanks for saving him, I said, dropping a few child food into any other abandoned cart, simply in case. You're welcome. I wanted to invite where he was, what had he been doing all this time, however I wasn't sure I ought to. And we had been busy. When we met Emmett and Rosalie in middle, we pushed our carts out of the shop. Already there has been a pile of bodies in baggage. The officer with the injured arm turned out to be Mark, one among Charlie's great pals. He sat at the stop of the road, applying pressure onto his arm with a person's shirt, anticipating his turn. Those who have been already treated were sitting or laid on the beds of the vans here, except mine. Hi there, you men are fast. Charlie huffed. Properly, just load it up for your cars. Steve'll escort you to the college, stick close and be careful. Sure, sir, they said. I will there quickly, I'll discover you. Yeah, now pass, he said solemnly. After Steve and different volunteers added the hampers of produce they collected, we followed Steve in an unmarried record, in 3 motors to the school. Even as we drove around it, I noticed the human beings had been being checked quickly for any symptoms by using a few nurses, who were covered via cops, earlier than they were allowed in. They all watched us disappear around the nook, or perhaps they have been handiest searching at the closing meals. I for my part didn't assume we'd be capable of feed those who have been already here now for lengthy. We carried the whole lot into the kitchens of the college's cafeteria and teachers' cafeteria that was going for use to feed the survivors here. They have been related, only separated by means of a door, so it must be large sufficient. It become a bit awkward. The other volunteers stole sideway glances at me but in no way stated anything. Now and again they stared at Rosalie, who changed into in a bad temper. Did any of men see 'em? We have been silent. I did. It turned into crazy. I mean, real fucking zombies. The law enforcement officials better have a plan. Some other commented. Howdy you are Swan's daughter proper. Did he say whatever? I shook my head. But they're all working hard to keep all people secure. We ought to simply do what they say. Yeah, till people begin killing each different over things. When that takes place I'm out, every guy for himself. We finished sporting inside the food nad, categorizing them in silence. We have been then taken through the returned entrance of the health club. In this side have been the folks that have been injured at the thrifty, all people separated with the aid of the blue, sterile cloths. I moved away and kept strolling, trying to keep a distance, to in which all the other cots were laid out. A few have been already taken, through the folks that passed the take a look at point. Allows circulate to the nook there, Edward stated, gesturing to the corner a few toes from the doorway. We would have a chunk of privateness. Is Charlie right here yet? I requested. If the injured were right here, then so must he. Edward shook his head. I do not listen him. I do not see him. I have a headache. Alice stated in marvel. I idea that become weird too, and noticed every other bizarre factor. Emmett turned into greater severe now. We've Bella right here, now can we pass? Rosalie growled. Edward kept unfolding my cot at human pace. We will wait until Charlie appears, then we're going to pass. Tisk. Alice settled Jasper in the nook, the cot closed him in, and Em and Rosalie sat at the ground. Edward sat at the threshold of the cot even as I sat crossed-legged. He sheathed his jacket and pulled a water bottle from the inner, draping the jacket over my shoulders. I'm going into surprise. I understand, you're correct with weird. He stated with a moderate smirk. I smirked too. Bella. I became at the voice. Eric Yorkie ran to us in a torn tea blouse. Hey, you made it, it's properly. He stated as he hugged. Yeah, I'm satisfied you are properly too. On the grounds that whilst have been the Cullen's lower back, we were given back today, Carlyle became concerned about personnel at the sanatorium and desired to help. He said. It changed into a piece flimsy but it flew beyond Eric. In which are your parents? I requested. He shrugged. I used to be on the park with Connor and misplaced him while did you hear from the others? Angela. Others Mike, Jess, Lauren, and Tyler had been going to the movies I suppose. That become weeks ago Bella, he stated shaking his head. What about Angela? Sorry, I want you had a cellular smartphone, I misplaced mine. Edward gave him his. Here. Thanks. He typed quite a number in and took a few steps away for privateness. A light went off in my head. Renee. I have to call Renee. Alice tossed me her phone. It bounced off my arms some times earlier than I trapped it. It changed into tough, tapping the numbers on the touchscreen with shaking arms. I made errors however finally did it. It simply saved ringing. I tried once more, and no person picked up. She frequently forgot to take her mobile telephone along with her or it, so I tried the resident's smartphone. And attempted it again. Not anything. Tears rolled down my face. I sniffed and took big breaths. I didn't need to cry now. Besides, Phil has a bat, she have to be pleasant, he had vowed to guard her. Bella, I am sorry, we cannot shop all people. Even supposing one us went to Florida we would not were capable of discover her. We don't know wherein she is. Not to say we'd reveal ourselves and scare the general public extra. All we will do is hope she'll do pleasant. However I knew my mother. She was robust, however not this strong. The sobs began to combat again. She could be lifeless already, or day after today, I can also by no means see her. I have to just. I sat down and took a mouthful of water. Edward draped his jacket over me again. I referred to as all and sundry. I wiped away my tears before Eric saw. Nobody's answering on the Newton's store, or the films. Perhaps they did not hear. I'm able to attempt later proper. Edward nodded. Concentrate. You men thoughts if stick with you men. I suggest we're still friends, right? Edward nodded. Eric sighed in alleviation and pulled every other cot near. I took one last sip of water earlier than presenting the water to him. The Newtons recognize how to survive in the wild, and I am sure Mike, Jess, Lauren and Tyler will stick collectively. Yeah, he said, taking the bottle. And Angela's smart. She will maintain her very own till the cops get to her. I heard they may be rounding everybody up. It's loopy. Almost an hour later, all and sundry who became outdoor turned into inner. There have been children, a few babies, elderly, young adults and adults. Most crying and greater wounded have been carried in as time went by, using, a few groaning. Human beings protested against it, demanded they be separated, killed. As though it were so clean, love it did not count. Being given cots and blankets appeased for now. I attempted calling my mother and Phil, and introduced Jacob. Eric attempted contacting anyone too. However, neither people got something. We became off the phones to keep the battery. I puzzled how long the phone's traces might nonetheless be intact. It did not take lengthy before the refugees started hounding the individuals who stored them again. They demanded solutions, referred to as all of the experts incompetent, demanded higher care, food, water. The lone park ranger did his excellent to calm them. A lady psychiatrist tried status up for him. She tried to degree with them and luxury them. The ultimate element all of us wished became an uprising in right here. After a while, individuals who came in sobbing and the impatient quieted, and Charlie changed into back. They'd protected a 5-block radius, going door to door. Day after today, some police officers, park rangers, the EMTs and a few volunteers with weapons training have been going out and increased the fringe. Eric and that I asked him to look for our buddies and their parents. I felt horrific asking. I wasn't the best one doing it, however I had to attempt, for them. Every other hour later, it'd have to be overdue in the evening, it turned into announce that meals might be dispersed flippantly. A cop stood on both aspects to keep the peace, in case what occurred on the supermarket occurred here. Do not push, do not reduce in line, all with have their proportion. I heard one say. Human beings had been in reality upset with the rations. I was on the end of the road with Eric. The Cullens claimed to be ill and not able to devour. After I were given to the desk, a person handed us a styrofoam tray with a plastic packet of utensils, and we slowly made our manner down. At the quit, I had an apple, a carton of milk, a small cup of water, cooked spinach, and bread. It became barely extraordinary from ordinary school lunch, however it would make the supply closing. I don't think corporations might be delivering food as typical. Each person settled to sleep soon after. The Cullens pretended to sleep on blankets at the floor besides Edward, who stood defend. I had laid right down to sleep too, but sleep wasn't coming. I was worn out, however I used to be on aspect 2. I knew there have been terrible people, mildly terrible at the least, like Lauren, however this case opened my eyes to complete new global. Eric turned over and that I couldn't help but smile at his mushed face, a bit drool dripping from his mouth. I decided to consciousness on that. When I woke up the next morning, Eric was practically falling off of his cot and Edward wasn't sitting on mine anymore. Looking to the corner, the Cullens were still there, huddled in the corner. I still couldn't quite sigh in relief. Looking around I noticed him in line, collecting breakfast, and ran to him. "Morning," he murmured, in that soft, sweet voice I missed. "Morning," I responded, voice cracking. I accepted a tray and followed suit. "Did you leap all right?" "Yes, you," he nodded, huffing his laugh out of his nose. "A clementine, a milk carton, and a tiny muffin. I wasn't hungry last night, but it caught up to me and was hungrier now." "Oh well, have you heard anything through people's minds?" He cringed. "What is it?" "I don't have high hopes for Forks." I wondered what he saw. It was definitely worse than what I have so far. I might cringe myself for the same reason one day. "This is for you." "Gee, thank you." I knew that. I stuttered. "Like that day, only a year ago, where he got me lunch, but it felt like forever ago." "Where's Chari?" I asked, starting with the clementine from the tray he held. "He's gone out again." My eyes fell to Alice. She and Jasper held each other close. Looking back at Edward, he shook his head. I had wanted to ask if she could tell me if Charlie would come back safely, but I think it meant she was seeing awful things too. "How's Carlisle?" I whispered, though it didn't matter. I can't hear him clearly, but I know he and Esme are safe. Carlisle will make sure they return. Knowing what I could, it was safe for Eric to be awake. As we ate, those sick and injured on the other side of the room began to wake. They coughed and moaned as they did. These sounds in this quiet gym that echoed off of the walls made me feel uneasy. Charlie and his force came back one short, with a small group of people, all with blood splattered all over them. After their clothes were taken and they had changed, could Charlie say, "Hey." This time, there was no one we knew in the group. Port Angeles was an hour away, 56 miles. No way Mike, Jess, Lauren or Tyler could make their way here on their own. Most abandoned their cars then, at the Thriftway, maybe they did too. Hiding was their best bet, but I wasn't sure. I tried to stop Charlie from leaving for the second round of checking. I wasn't sure he'd come back this time and I didn't want to find out if he didn't. It was Waylon, a really close friend, who was lost. He gripped my hand that was clutching his jacket and told me he needed to go. He kissed my forehead and left. I wrapped my arms around me and hugged myself. Eric gripped my shoulder and I mustered a half smile. "How are you doing?" I asked him. He shrugged. "I'll know once your dad gets to my house." The next day was the same. And the next. And the next. Most of us were hungry now, the rations only holding us for 2 hours until we got hungry again. I felt bad that I was paying attention to my hunger. It wasn't important. The Cullens couldn't keep from eating for long. The people who served us noticed. They claimed to have allergies, so they could only get certain things. Things that they tried to give to me but I felt guilty having. Instead, the little muffins and school apples I used to hate were hidden in my backpack. I poured their cups of water into the water bottle Eric and I had shared that first day. The other refugees weren't immune to the hunger. On top of feeling suffocated, caged in, none of us were allowed to go anywhere else but the bathroom and still had to be chaperoned. More sick people brought in, feeding the fear, and the wailing cries of hungry children made things worse. Out of hunger and annoyance they screamed for the caretaker to shut the kid up. Some of the kids were now in the care of an adult appointed by one of the officers, their parents not yet found. Others yelled back, "Shut the fuck up, we're all hungry." A fight, naturally, ensued. It was diffused but we were all rattled by it, already on edge as it was. At night, people prayed furiously. I wasn't sure if they knew we could hear their whispers, rocking back and forth. Half of the gym was now filled with sick or injured, or both, people. Before they took up only a fourth of the room and there was a gap between us. Now the cots were merely separated by a plastic curtain. Carlisle called Charlie and by his advice, we were all moved into classrooms on the second floor. The gym was now only for the unhealthy and others had to be away until further notice. Those who were against helping them at all expressed their relief without hindrance. After finishing setting up our area, the teens group were able to got to sleep. This time around, on the 4th day in the camp or 5th day since Forks was attacked, Charlie brought a few familiar faces. Jacob and Quill. When I saw him I realized I hadn't thought of him or Billy or Quill or Embry. The Cullens were here, not that was an excuse. He hugged me tightly, picking me up from my feet but staring at the Cullens with cold eyes. "What are you doing here? I can't get a hi when I came to save you, Bells." Jake said, flashing his white smile. "Hi, Quill," I said, greeting the one other who followed him. "I caught them driving up the road," Charlie said in a scolding voice. "You need some real clothes." The cut-off shorts weren't recommended by the medical officials we had on hand. "Jake, Quill, you know the Cullens?" "Yeah." Both sides gave each other a stiff nod. "How did Billy let you come?" I asked. "Didn't ask permission. It hit the res but Forks looks worse." "I wasn't kidding, Bells. You should come back with me, you too, Charlie." "Can't, son. I've got a job to do. Besides, the reservation isn't big enough for everyone. Everyone is my responsibility. We were told to stay put by state officials, so how's Billy and the res holding up?" "Not good. We never expected zombies would exist, so we never built a fence. It's as ravaged as Forks, being cornered with forest and the sea, but Billy and I were staying put until I left. I'm guessing the others are in their basements too. You should go back, Jacob, the two of you, if it's safer than here. We have limited resources as it is." Jacob looked between me and Edward and back. "I'll take you back later." "No worries, Charlie. I think someone's calling you, Chief," he alerted. Charlie looked behind him and got up again with a huff after just being able to rest for a few minutes after making it back. The air in our little corner grew tenser. One time wasn't enough. Had to come back to rub it in bloodsuckers. Jacob said lowly. Jacob, so they've bred, Rosalie said. So long as you freaks are around, so will we. That's low, you don't know anything. Quill said at the same time. Edward's lips fluttered. No sound that I could detect, but Rosalie flipped her hair and sat back. But Jacob must have heard. How the hell do you know that? Jacob growled. I read your father's mind once. So the legend is true, Quill gasped almost in fear. Hey, what's with the attitude? He didn't tell you, Edward asked, a little smug. Tell me what? Tell me what? Jacob gripped my wrist and Edward stood up, but he couldn't look down at him because he was the same height despite being 2 years younger. Remember the legends I told you, about the Quileutes? Jacob asked. The cold ones. I guess I understand why that's the one you remember. I can't tell you myself, I'm supposed to keep it secret. But I told you before. He took a break from staring Edward down to urge me to remember, as if to say, before he says anything. I looked down, eyes darting. His voice from my memory muffled, spoke, as I looked at him. The Cullens don't come here werewolves. I at least had the courtesy to try to keep her safe, but you didn't even give her a warning. Edward sighed. Too bad you weren't gone before you let that Bluke sucker beat her up. Quit talking about me like I'm not here. What of it? So he's a werewolf and you're a vampire. If there's witches too, then whatever. What does this have to do with anything? He'll tell you that when he's ready. Edward sighed, as if he were doing Jacob a favor. I came because I can keep you safe. I didn't know they were back, but that doesn't change anything. Jacob said. To protect Billy he suddenly shifted. Anyone related to anyone who's related to the Blacks, Ateras, Calls and Yulis have the werewolf gene. Quill explained. You and Embry too. Yeah, but we haven't seen him yet since we thought he was recruited by the Yuli gang. But I guess he's been fine this entire time and must be holding his own now. Anyway, it's good to see you guys are okay, but shouldn't you be helping the elders in La Push? So you're staying with them? I shrugged. Like Charlie said, you can't stay. Maybe this will get better and you can visit. Until then, Billy needs you. You're all he has and you can't leave him alone. Fine, but if anything happens, you know where to find me. I nodded. Guess we'll wait till Charlie's back. He huffed and flopped onto Eric's cot. Quill sat down more gingerly. When Eric came back from the bathroom, I introduced him and they tried to pretend to the best of their ability to get along. Charlie wasn't back when lunchtime rolled around. Of course, people rushed to get in line. I let them cut me and apologized to a girl I bumped into as a result. She mumbled, "It's okay," and lowered her head. She seemed a little odd to me, like her clothes weren't meant for her, though maybe she needed to use the rescued piles of clothes, but she had her hood on, actively hiding her face with her hair as well, but shrugged it off. Even a while after lunch, Charlie wasn't back. Jacob and Quill got up to leave on their own when the fire alarm sounded and the sprinklers went off. What the hell? Everyone else groaned or said their own versions of what's happening. A few walked into the hall to try to find someone. They exchanged a few words with others from the other rooms who did the same, but in the silence that followed we heard screaming. It was coming from the first floor, but we couldn't hear what was being said. It got louder and louder, and so did the running footsteps. Quote exclamation mark quote. R-U-R-Ra, Guriya-un. The man ran down the hall, no longer screaming words, while we looked at each other unsure of what we heard. But the girl I had seen before made her way out, and then Edward was pulling me out the room yelling, "Everyone go." I ran as fast as I could to keep up with his slightly faster than human speed and looked behind me. Behind Jacob the other people were beginning to move and they were falling out off the doors of the stairwell in that end of the hall, the horde having run into them. Screams erupted and in the same second they dropped everything and ran or climbed over each other to get ahead. Rounding the corner, Edward swung me onto his back and ran lightning fast into the stairwell at this end of the hall, where the girl disappeared down to the first floor. We caught up to her at the bottom. She glanced at us but kept running down the hall, sticking close the wall, footsteps echoing loudly. We were on the far side of the gym, far from the side where the sick, or should I say infected, were. The screams were ear-shattering. And they didn't scream. The people who cared for them until now were being devoured alive. Without thinking, I looked through the windows. Some turned around and looked at us straight in the eyes when we came into their view. The girl's footsteps boomed as loud as my heart. One was Mark, arm dangling by an artery, half of his face eaten. "Where's Charlie?" I thought as they started sprinting towards us. We passed the windows quickly and ran into the street. Wide-eyed, my head fell onto Edward's shoulder while screams rang in the street, coming from inside the building. I could hear their growls coming after us, the screams of people clear as day, which was odd, then a loud thud. They had jumped from the windows. I could hear Jacob and Quill huff little cries as they ran at their full speed. I looked back, and the strange woman was far behind, running with a desperate look in her eyes. Those with all four limbs were fast, the ones with both legs and a missing arm or both gone struggled, while the rest missing large chunks lagged. Jacob had seen her too and shape-shifted, his skin shredded, revealing a large beast. He knocking her over onto his back and bounded to us, catching up in no time. My eyes followed him. He spared a look before turning back to the road. I stared, not paying anything attention to anything else. "Breathe, Bella," I heard Edward urge. "Breathe, Bella," I heard Edward urge. I hadn't observed I was nearly hyperventilating. I tried to regain control of my lungs that heaved as though I've been running 5 miles an hour. "I assume we misplaced them," Emmett said, Eric knocked out by him, placing over his shoulder. "We should get to Carlisle," Alice stated. I checked out the abnormal female. She was limp on his back. He just gave the impression of a blown-up version of an everyday canine. Become it extraordinary, it didn't scare me. The clinic changed into overrun. It became filled with those fuckers. Rosalie brought. "Are we going there?" "No, we're meeting on the house." Edward sighed. "We need to get out of sight and far from right here or they will find us." He glanced behind him quickly. Forks Clinic became simplest 9 minutes from the college, so that Horde may want to make it onto the street we were walking on, in the event that they were not beforehand folks already. Maine, Edward turned onto the field that surrounded Forks' excessive faculty and the elementary school that sat behind it. Angela's dual brothers went to high school there. It become empty now. However, what passed off to the youngsters BSCK there. Trespassing at the assets of the houses here, we crossed into the wooded area and ran in a nook, apparently north, now not slowing down. Jacob and Edward traveled over the knocked-down trunks and boulders cautiously. The whole lot was wet from the early morning rain and the moss slippery. I shivered from the bloodless, my garments wet from the sprinklers and the 50 diploma weather retaining them cold. "Should we stop?" Edward requested. "No, I am first class." "Is Eric?" "He have been out for a while now. He will be waking up quickly." We stopped, seemingly not a long way from the Solduck River we had to cross to get to the Cullens' residence. Eric and strange female were laid on the wet floor and Jacob shifted returned into himself, or human form. He become each. I regarded away because he changed into naked. He become given something and I heard him pulling it on. Searching lower back, it become Quill's shirt he had stretched to wear as a skirt. He gave the look of his ancestors may have, in their leather skirts, and loose, lengthy black hair. He looked at me intensely. What? You're the one looking at me." I blushed and grew to become away. I had constantly notion he become beautiful in his own manner, perhaps at the equal degree as Edward if I allowed myself to be honest. "Like what you see." "Gross, Jake." "What? I am not your kind of monster." "Isn't always that a double fashionable?" What is that meant to mean?" "They're vampires. They feed on human beings, kill them, and it is me you're staring at." "Shish. Maintain your voice down or they will listen," I stated, gesturing to the 2 knocked-out bodies. "The Cullens in no way killed, or ate up every body." "Do you truly trust that?" He then looked at them. The others did not look at us, or moved, or made any try to defend themselves. Edward had turned his head. "Of root we have, all of us did, but that doesn't mean we aren't sorry," Edward stated. Jacob scoffed. "We regret it and painting's difficult every day to withstand." I stared at him. His expression become somber. His eyes, which have now turned pitch black, made it appear as if I have been seeing a different aspect of him. "What number of?" Jacob demanded, glaringly disgusted. 9. Edward's eyes shifted to me. "And then you come into Forks and try to stay with your food. They aren't meals to us, it is not misplaced to us that they may be people." It isn't always lost to me that I ought to kill her any second if I wasn't cautious enough. He growled, baring his fangs at Jacob. I barely got out of the manor while he charged, picked him up from the ground, and pinned him to a tree behind us. Our nature is part of the motive why I left. I attempted to stay away. I attempted. You don't know something much so that you exceptional keep your critiques to yourself. Edward, do not, I said, a hand gripping his forearm. My hand slipped off while he let him pass, and he shook his jacket, nevertheless irritated. I do not assume we must fight proper now. We are all in a variety of problem. There may be no time for something this is. I said, vampires and werewolves have been always mortal enemies, since the beginning of time. Our curse is due to them. So long as they exist, so will we. It is no curse from us but one passed down to you via your ancestors. Both of you close up. I don't deliver a fuck who came first, the hen or the egg, it would not remember. He is waking up, Emmett warned. Eric began waking up, groggy as though he'd been asleep for 10 hours. When he could see us he started out backing away. Whoa, you do not freak out. How do I now not freak out? Why are you? Do I knock him out once more? Emmett requested. Eric jumped away from him. Did you see that? Yeah, I did not recognize both. I imply he changed into a werewolf. Jacob said for him. Greater like shapeshifters. Edward corrected. I stared them down. What approximately you? He looked from Edward to Emmett who he was going for walks beside until Emmett knocked him out because he become gradual. Vampire. Emmett replied. No manner. Appearance in which were. It's not impossible. Quill said, hands at either facet as though to say, look in which we're now. Eric was silent but his thoughts wasn't. We do not feed on humans. We've got a commonplace enemy, the ones lower back at the town. So let's try to maintain calm or they'll have an advantage over us. You can study my mind. Edward shrugged. Are you a vampire? He requested me. No, of course not. We're going to give an explanation for later. Proper now we have to get to the Cullens' house. I stated, walking towards a typical woman who became coming to now. Who's that? I shrugged as I helped her to sit up straight. Her hood had fallen off and that I may want to see she become in her mid-1920s with matted quick hair hanging over her face. Here, I stated, unscrewing our bottle of water. It was slightly half of complete however sufficient for her. Thanks. You are Charlie's daughter. Sorry about what occurred. I allow that last bit go over my head. I am Bella, those are my friends. I recognize, they may be Dr. Cullen's youngsters and it is Eric, a classmate. She made an bizarre expression as she took any other swig when her eyes moved to Jacob. I am Nikki, short for Nicole. I used to work at Forks Sanatorium. She stated it as though it turned into lengthy earlier than the assault. I left the sanatorium when all at once we have been putting in some other patient in each room handiest meant for one. I discerned something became incorrect. We had been getting inundated speedy. Some weeks ago, someone with the identical signs like the others changed into admitted. He got increasingly more worse and might spit out liters of blood. It covered most of the floor and there were even splatters at the home windows. A massive range which honestly isn't ordinary. He became moved into a quarantine unit, however certainly it was only a room at the some distance side of the clinic, because of how lots of the stuff he'd cough up. However it did not seem to have an effect on his motor skills, losing a lot blood. He coughed up blood sometimes and regarded to do it on the personnel on purpose. Those human beings got unwell too. Carlyle become doing his high quality, telling us what to do, separating patients. But it spread rapid and I left due to the fact I used to be scared I might be subsequent. I saw them head to head, while I used to be trying to load my grandparents into the automobile, trying to go away, but I could not. You don't have to inform us, I stated, as she took another swig, blinking her tears away. I desired to cover in Forks High School, thought I'd skip for a youngster. She explained, pulling the large hoodie she wore. The point is, that guy was already contagious inside the day he was admitted. And died 10 days later. I thought they said with took 24 days. She shook her head wildly. The signs are similar to that of rabies. 24 days is the longest recorded time that a person took to die from it, but it varies widely, to 12 days regardless of the same old procedure to deal with it. I do not suppose it is normal rabies even though we had been instructed to keep up the lie the government told the news to say, an order handed down to hospitals, to keep away from mass panic. They may be infected right now, both as quickly as they're bitten or inside 24 hours. It bypasses the immune device by going into the nervous gadget, no longer the circulatory device, and moves directly to the front part of the brain which controls reminiscence, emotion, hassle fixing, appetite and motor characteristic. That's why all of these people were acting unusual, walking or acting unusual in the streets, attacking humans, trying to consume them, or were suddenly greater reckless than common, consuming more. It should additionally be able to get into the brain stem if they can run like an ordinary human. They should nonetheless be getting oxygen and their coronary heart have to still be pumping blood for the duration of their frame. The mind stem controls that. A few had milder symptoms. You would think it become the cold or flu and not this rabies strain that has been spreading round. It mutates just like the cold. The signs and symptoms are unique in anyone. It can take longer than a day for someone to showcase symptoms and people get close to them. If they kissed it is over. After infecting the mind it moves on to the salivary glands. It really is why they bite and it infects their victim. Like vampire venom. Like I said, it mutates the virus adjustments so it may infect the host faster. And while it does, when that person infects another, that new victim receives sick even faster, their demise nearer. And so the time frame gets shorter. Back on the faculty, it took 5 days for them to be completely misplaced. However, they have been infected on account that they were bitten, spat on or something through them. That means that even though they may be nevertheless human, they've already been hijacked. That is the fucked up element. They're now not exactly brain dead, they just do not have manage anymore. So then, Quill started out, voice wavering. He didn't end, however. Kiki nodded as though knowing what he was going to say. Soon it'll be instantaneous. I give it 24 hours max. Soon it will likely be instant. I provide it 24 hours max. Nikki had given us loads of insight, but it wasn't precisely clean to swallow. We wished we should changed garments, but Edward recommended to do that later. She became silent. However, I used to be positive she noticed Jacob as a wolf, even though she failed to say something, just walked on the long way facet of the institution. Edward and I had exchanged seams, uncertain of bringing it up and explaining it to her, but she seemed to have been through sufficient. She'd locate the whole lot out later. Nevertheless, little bit of a klutz, Edward commented, grabbing my elbow and saving me from myself for the 6th time. Not anything absolutely changed, I admitted, smiling in embarrassment. I am happy. I didn't dare to examine him. However, I was satisfied to be near him. If only he would hold my hand. Should I forgive him for leaving? Or changed into I simplest seeking out comfort now that Charlie's gone? I won't have visible it, but I was certain. I used to be thankful I failed to should witness it. A memory of the zombies turning to look us walking beyond them replayed in my head. They themselves made plenty of noise but they heard us, Nikki, Eric and that I, because the Cullens made no sound. They're not mind dead. In an effort to nevertheless pay attention, the zombies, I said out loud. Yeah, they have got all their senses, besides perhaps taste. The mind stem is what controls that. I guess I overlooked that. Nikki said, I intended that their hearing is ideal. We have been jogging on the alternative facet of the fitness center, but they heard us from nearly a football area away. Then, which means any sound we make, if they're close enough, they'll pay attention and run to it. Unexpectedly, the 3 humans tried not to snap any twigs with our next step. Shit, shit, shit. They may be like the 28 weeks later zombies, excellent Speedy. Quill stated, pulling at his hair. Once we choose up the supplies you guys say you have, then what? We need to live away from populated regions. The zombies would stick close to them because of the sounds or smell of people. Jasper stated. He have been quiet this entire time, so all of us checked out him. Do you believe you studied they have a heightened feel of smell? Nikki asked. Different things do. I don't think they do. She stated, answering her personal question. Our walk was silent for the reason that then. It is tough to provide an explanation for the lost feeling. Despite the fact that we knew in which we had been headed, we still felt misplaced. It's quiet. There may be no birds chirping, simply the rustling of leaves and the sound of dashing water at a distance. It changed into the Soul Duck River, which we had to go to get to the Cullens' residence. Considering that our garments had been already wet, may as nicely. It changed into a few meters huge but knee-deep, so we failed to need to swim. But it had a mattress of rocks. The people had to step carefully. We've been strolling for a while now. With the timber and clouds within the way, it regarded like it was night time already. However, it couldn't be later than 6 o'clock. Are you certain you realize in which we are going? Eric asked. Yes, a few extra meters. Edward spoke back. Jacob and Quill have had a facet conversion of returning to the res. However, with town overrun with the aid of zombies, there has been no manner. Soon the tree line broke, and we have been at the Cullens' garden. Their residence with the lighting on turned into like a beacon of desire. Carlyle and Esme had been inside the dwelling room, a pile of backpacks at the sofa. I wish I could say seeing them made me feel higher. I used to be relieved they had been all right, yes, but they too had bothered eyes. Esme hugged me and Edward, and Carlyle checked to peer how they fared, having to resist feeding for so long. Properly to see you are all okay, Carlyle stated. Nicky, Eric, he nodded at Jacob and Quill. There are still garments upstairs, you ought to exchange before you trap Bloodless. Esme said softly. Emmett's garments need to fit you boys, and Rosalie's you. It's been so long, Bella, she sighed, hugging me tightly once more. You're telling me, I stated. I tried to push the lump in my throat down. Esme had turned out to be a mother to me, even slightly greater than my personal was. Whilst Renee became threatening to take me to Jacksonville, and actually came and started to present my suitcases, I had wanted her extra then and increasingly after. Unnecessary to mention she and that I didn't speak a good deal after that. I overlooked you. She stroked my hair. I am happy you're both adequate. Vampires can get infected too. I saw one some days in the past. I stated, gaze moving among them. Edward instructed us. I am afraid things will get an awful lot worse from here. Carlyle said, come on, Bella. Alice referred to as. She had already changed out of her wet clothes and took me into her room. I desire I may want to blow dry your hair, she said, shaking my hair because the appliance blew warm air and that I pulled on a couple of Rosalie's pants on. I could use a distraction. You ought to be hungry. Not only were their eyes dark, however the backs below their eyes regarded bruised. It truly is the horrifying part. You heard how quiet it become outside. Animals are sensitive. No doubt they ran away when they heard the screaming. She huffed a breath. I pulled the collar of my new hoodie ahead to try to assist. I realize none of you men will consume us, but it is K in case you need me to. It isn't, now not to us. She stated, alas, that specialize in winding the wire around the blow dryer. We are sorry, nothing we do will ever make it right. Now not even an eternity handling our suffering. I can't even consider what it is like, so although I witnessed it occurring, I would not say or assume something. Jacob is not generally like that. Oh Bella, we left you on my own and you had to run to the palms of a canine. Come on, I half-heartedly scolded. He saved the ache away, so, be great. We're going to be as excellent as he's. She then winced and rubbed her temples. Edward had opened the door. Let's pass. I looked back at Alice, however she became smiling and skipped out of the room. Do you imply what you said? He asked softly. I always mean what I say. I said, and hurried down the steps. Esme had made cold sandwiches for us, something we were grateful for after 5 days of rations. Nicky, are you experiencing any symptoms of hypovolemia? I'm not in shock, Dr. Carlyle. I already checked before. She said around a mouthful. No hallucinations. He prodded. No. He's a werewolf, right? Yes. Then no. You saved my life. Jacob puffed up his chest. Yeah, I did. I still think it's not right, but thanks. They're vampires. Eric suddenly screamed. Startled, I turned. He was wide-eyed, covering his mouth with his hands. Nicky was silent. Sorry, he said. You? She asked me. I'm human. I knew there was something up, she said through a grin. With all due respect, you're too good-looking, Dr. Cullen. Yes, well, good thing there's no need for concern. He glanced at me. Nicky grasped this as well as I did. Sorry for passing out then, but I'm over the initial shock. Though, where are you guys headed? She asked, gesturing to the pile of packed hiking backpacks. We have been thinking Alaska. We have friends there in Denali, but it's far. However, we can't stay here. Why can't we stay here? I asked. Though this house has rolling gates which would protect us, we need to go to a place that the virus hasn't touched, more for our sake. The animals here have already gone. Alaska has more acres of forest. We may be able to survive ourselves. Their home is at the top of the highest mountain in Alaska. This flu-like virus might be able to survive in cold weather, but at the top of a mountain we won't be heard, and perhaps may be able to establish a similar existence to what we had before. Jacob wants to go back to La Push, Edward Said. I can speak for myself. I advise against that, at least on your own. Carlyle said. We can handle our own. Speak for yourself, Quill said. I haven't shifted yet. Then you'll ride my back, no homo. What will you do when you're chased by a horde? How will you fight without using your snout? How, as a wolf, would you be protected from contagion? Jasper challenged. Jacob was silent. Allow us to come with you, Carlyle told him. It isn't on the way, Rosalie resisted. You don't have to come, Esme and I will go. He looked over his shoulder and Esme nodded at him. We're not splitting up again. Rosalie muttered. Anyone else want to stay behind? I'm going too, I said, before anyone spoke for me. Me too, me three. Nikki and Eric answered. You'll just slow us down, Rosalie said. It'll be a waste of gas otherwise. I responded. You still have your car, right? I asked Carlyle. No, I lost it when the hospital was overrun. This will be the first thing we do, buckle up. We'll be separating into two groups. Nikki, Eric, Emmett, Rosalie and Esme are one, the rest are with me. He said, handing out the 3 bags, each with a tent attached. Each bag has a day's worth of supplies in case we get separated. We'll find each other again before the end of that day. But if something happens and the groups are divided further, make sure you stick to a vampire. We couldn't help but give an awkward chuckle. Let's go. Hop on, Edward murmured. Nikki had muttered. Guess you guys don't need human food and stuff. Just a warning, we run fast. Emmett said to her. I grunted as I jumped. The bag was like a weight wanting to keep me on the ground. We took off, not running in any formation but everyone stuck close to their group, Nikki on Rosalie and Eric on Emmett, back out into the night. I turned when I heard metal clanging. The lights turned off as the rolling gates, the sort that guards stores against robbers, came down the sides of the house. Do the Denali's know we're coming? I grunted. The backpack beat my back, chopping my words. Carlyle called them before to warn them. There's many airports there so the infection may spread faster, but in Denali the population is far less than here, 1,867. If they hurry, they may be able to build a wall around the mountain top before it all goes to hell. Carlyle had said we might be able to establish a similar existence to what we had before the outbreak, but I stopped myself from thinking about it. What if we couldn't? We followed the trail we made with our scent on to the Cullens' house back into town, treading more carefully when we were a few miles away from its treeline in case some of the infected wandered into the surrounding forest. It was clear, but we stopped behind the trees. Craning my neck, I saw there were more than 10 of them walking aimlessly in grass field that surrounded Forks High School, Forks Elementary School and a few homes. In this area there were long stretches of lawn, no fences, a 5-block radius where we were. If we ran across, we would be out in the open for 5 minutes. It doesn't seem like much, but it would take around 300 steps to get to the streets on the other side, where there was still no cover. And still, the infected from the hospital could be roaming there. What do we do? Eric asked. I say run like hell. Emmett said. All of Forks is like this, it's best we don't attract attention. Carlyle said. Are you insinuating we run in small groups when their backs are turned? Rosalie asked. I really don't think that'll work. Nikki said. Honestly, I don't either. I inputted. Alice, if we run, do we make it? Carlyle asked. Seemingly tired, Alice pressed her fingertips into her temples as she looked with her eyes closed. I can't see, she said, choked up as if she were wanting to cry. What do you mean? I can't any of your futures, she said, shaking her head. I don't know why. I could just fine when we were at the shelter before the Quileutes appeared. Her head turned sharply to them. We didn't do anything. There's nothing you can do, it's your makeup. She grumbled. They're not human or vampires, that's why she can't see our futures. Mixed with us, they act like blind spots. Edward thought out. Alice can see the future, Edward can read minds. I explained to Eric and Nikki. We will just have to make do. I'm sorry, Carlyle. Carlyle laid a comforting hand on her shoulder. I could distract them. No, I said, clutching his jacket. Carlyle had said the same. We should split into groups of 3. Emmett, Rosalie and Eric go first. See the blue house behind those trees. Wait behind it. A little nervous, Em and Rose got up from their crouch. Emmett grabbed Eric and they ran, pushing their vampire speed to their limit, to the other side, disappearing behind the cluster of trees. Now you two with Nikki. Carlyle, Esme and Nikki went next. Then Jacob, Quill and Alice. Now us. Hold on tight, he breathed to me. I was never afraid of the speeds he ran, but I squeezed my eyes shut this time, planning to only open them when we made it. The infect zombies had turned towards the path we ran but kept waddling, seemingly in place. Okay, Jasper breathed. In a single file we walked around the house, close to its walls. Emmett nodded to it and Jasper shook his head and nodded to the house in front of this one. The back door was still locked. The lock was broken quietly and walked in carefully. Usually the front doors were kept open to let air in. Forks was safe, but maybe it let other things in. Emmett checked the upstairs. The rest of us will look for food and blunt force weapons. I didn't think there was anyone here, because everything showed evidence of the beginnings of a mundane day, then urgency to get out. We found canned meat, beans and vegetables in the cupboards and rotting food in the fridge. With 350 calories in each can, what we packed wasn't enough. Everyone's gone, it doesn't matter, I told myself. There was no one upstairs and no basement, and nothing in the medicine cabinet to be used as first aid. But with a fireplace poker and a bat, we made our way out. On Forks Avenue, we looked south for anyone or anything coming up from the thriftway there. There was an Outfitters but we decided not to chance it. Can we go over there? Eric asked. He pointed towards the area where Forks Community Hospital was located. I have to see Angela. Just a quick look. After seeing the abandoned cars in the thriftway's lot weren't good to use, we jogged across another large open space to the part of Forks where the church was. Angela was babysitting while her parents went on a date night. Knowing her, she would have locked herself and her brothers somewhere in the house. But she wasn't there. The inside of her house was a mess. Like the thriftway, there were no cans of food left and her room was overturned. I had been in her room once. She was helping me put the stamps on my college applications. She had a bright future ahead of her, that's for sure. Eric sobbed quietly to himself. Along her walls were photos of us, all of us, together. La Push, prom, the cafeteria, graduation. Her camera was still here, on her dresser. I took a few photos down and put them in my jacket's pocket. I was sure she wouldn't mind. Not knowing for sure if she was alive or dead seemed worse than knowing if she was dead. I shook my head when it concocted an image of her as a zombie. She'd never hurt a fly. I wished that wasn't her fate, or at least, that she was killed before she hurt any more people. And odd thing to think about. Angry, Eric insisted we go to the church Mr. Weber preached at, just in case. Even if we didn't find her, we could find survivors, he said. But even I knew that it was closed. Of course no one would be there. It was on the way back to the 101 road. So we had no reason not to give a quick check. It was still locked. After Eric called out a few times for someone to respond if there was anyone there, we pulled him away, telling him to shush or they'll hear. We went back from where we came, avoiding the hospital completely, and headed north to the Newton's Sporting Goods store, the only store like it in 60 miles. Same for the thriftway. Other than this grocery store, there was 2 small ones. When we entered, we could barely contain our screams. There lay Mr. and Mrs. Newton, massacred, on the ground, a giant pool of blood under them. My stomach turned. This is what human death smells like. Eric and I watched with our hands over our mouths and noses as Edward moved their bodies. Stab and bullet wounds were all over their torsos, and bruises in their faces. I had seen them alive and well, happy, just a day before they attacked my house. And now they were dead. Katie was nowhere to be found. Hopefully she escaped. This place was picked to the bone. All hunting weapons, bows, arrows, guns, knives and other necessary supplies for spending a week or more in the forest were gone. But what filled my head was how armed other people could be and what they were willing to do. We covered them with what clothing was left and stood around them for a silent moment before leaving. With my hand in Edward's admittedly I held tight with both of my hands we walked up the avenue, heading towards La Michoacana. It sold imported goods from Hispanic countries but we were there because they butchered meat. Thankfully the fridge was still on, and the containers of saved cattle blood were stored and still good. The virus had reportedly come from dogs and cats and only them, there were no cases of cattle being infected. We humans waited outside while they took a chance and drank what they could find. "Why are we here?" Jacob asked. "They're feeding," I said. "When they come back, you'll see their eyes have turned gold. And when it's human, red. You just saw they have great control," I said defensively. Nikki and Eric couldn't help looking away when they came back out, but Jacob grabbed Edward's arm, stopping him, and looked at him straight into the eyes. Nikki and Eric could see then the change. They went ahead while he, Quill, Nikki, and Eric lagged behind them. We went to the pharmacy to take things that we could barter or use. Soon, US currency would be worthless. Or at least here. Is the rest of the world faring better? The big things like Express which increased red blood cell count, which would give our bodies more endurance, weren't here but we took all sorts of painkillers, and things that had the same effect. We managed to find some basic first aid things in the back, and a few boxes of pills for anxiety and some that were prescribed to patients that haven't been picked up. There wasn't any rubbing alcohol left, but we took some bottles of vodka with a high ethyl alcohol percentage which could be used for wounds and as a disinfectant from Ron's Food Mart as well as some boxed dry food like crackers. Good thing. We came into contact with a horde from Tillicum Park that spilled onto the 101, the road we were taking to get to La Push. I fell being pulled by Edward. There were parents, elderly, teenagers, and smaller children. I couldn't look away from the monster-like children. Connor was among them. Even on the backs of vampires we still couldn't outrun them. So long as they could see us, hear our pounding feet, and smell the blood on us, they would come after us. "Wait, if we do not kill them we'll make them La Push," Jasper said, stopping and turning to stand the horde. "We are no longer going to fight them, right?" Eric asked with a wavering voice. "We had been gone. Need to sooner or later," Nikki said, clutching her firepoker. "And the little youngsters," Quill requested. None of us desired to harm them, despite the fact that they had been zombies, except for Jasper. He ripped part of his blouse, tied it to the mouth of a vodka bottle and lit it, then threw it at them, engulfing them in flames. They fell to the floor and writhed, moaning, growling ache. They're hijacked, but they are able to nonetheless sense ache. They may never return to regular. Nikki restated. We found an deserted minivan and drove it to the nearest gasoline station and stuffed it, no longer trying to be stranded on the 110 a ways from Los Angeles Push. It changed into broadly speaking empty. There were few cars to pressure around, even though occasionally we needed to move them out of the way. "Is there something else we ought to know about them?" Eric requested. "Except that they're speedy and sturdy." "No, but there are conventional vampires around. I noticed one which become infected," I introduced. "They are as rapid as the Cullens. In the event that they can be infected, then so can werewolves." Both the Cullens and the Quileutes agreed to maintain their existences secret, however who knows how long it is going to be until others see one. "So preserve it secret. Do you devour people?" "Path not," Jacob answered in disgust. They had been silent while the Cullens got returned in the vehicle. "My bet is it may not be too long." Carlyle sighed. They then noticed they may pay attention from afar. We continued at the desolate street in silence. The solar was rising and we have been going for walks when you consider that Fork's excessive school became overrun. It looks as if long time ago thinking about it now. And it had simplest been every week. My head banged against the vibrating automobile as it turned into driven down La Push Road. I wanted to sleep, however I wasn't certain it became okay too. "What do we do in case your dad is not there?" Eric asked. "He is there," Jacob answered. "But what if something takes place? He is a tribe elder. Even though he is disabled, he must be kept secure for you to bypass down expertise of our tribe to maintain it alive. Much like how the president is probably sitting in a bunker proper now. Would not you be capable of try this?" "I would if I paid attention," he stated with remorse. "Besides, it was quality when we left. It is high quality." And it appeared a door it became doing better seeing that then. We rolled as much as a roadblock and a small institution of squatties with big weapons in complete fight gear and a huge truck at the side of the street. One in every of them put his hand up telling us to prevent. He came spherical to the driving force's seat and appeared in. Any accidents? No, sir, Carlyle replied. Who are those humans with you? My family. This girl is a colleague, my son's girlfriend and her pals, 2 of which can be Quileutes. The man nodded. All right, bypass on through. You may be stopped and checked by our medical experts to make sure you are not infected and nothing you deliver pose a hazard to the survivors here. Has the army been deployed here? Jasper requested. All I'm able to say is that we are here to relocate survivors to secured cities. Secured cities? Edward asked, but the guy pulled his head out of the car and stepped away. That is the quid of that conversation. We stood in line in the back of the roadblock even as 3 squatties seemed via the automobile in our bags. They gave us a fundamental take a look at up and had us strip off our layers and patted us all the way down to make certain we were not wounded, bitten, or wearing guns. We were allowed to hold our bat and fire poker and hunting knives. They asked us if there were any others in Forks, to which we responded we did not suppose so. In the event that they were not dead, they were undead or had left Metropolis already. When we were all checked, we have been directed down L.A. Push Street, the only different road into the reservation, Mora Avenue, become reduce off. Only one way in or out. We handed a few extra smaller corporations of infantrymen and their vehicles along the manor, the street being 6 miles lengthy. At the ocean side, the military's presence became sturdy, which turned into both first-rate but uncomfortable. A soldier told us to go into one of the tents by means of the seaside, and Jacob took that threat to ask for his father and was informed he could be escorted to the tribal council. We were stopped whilst we observed, however Jacob defined we might be asked for besides. Seeing nothing wrong with it, we have been allowed to go. The room was packed with participants of the tribe I failed to meet, apart from the maturer adults, a few more youthful than me or a bit older. Billy came quickly to drag Jacob down into a hug before whacking him in the head. Ow, what were you questioning? He hit Quill. Yow, why did not you prevent him? They didn't. Solution. Why'd you bring the bloodsuckers? A girl growled. Shoulda let them die up there. Now Leah, presently I don't assume we are able to shrink back help. Billy appeared up at Carlyle, who nodded. But as for these young'uns I have never met. We uncovered ourselves whilst we had been looking to get here, jogging. Billy nodded. I did too, Jacob admitted. I shifted to shop her. Billy's eyes shifted to Quill, who shook his head. Billy sighed heavily. That is Charles Yulee, old Quill and Sue Clearwater, our only elders, daughter Leah Clearwater, her more youthful brother Seth, the leader of the Page C. Sam Yulee, his mate Emily Young, and Jared Cameron, Paul Lahote and Embry Call. All have already shifted. Except me, I am more of a mother determined inside the percent. Sue said cheerfully. Our mother and father don't know yet, Embry stated, explaining the percent's dependence on her. I am Carlyle, this is my wife Esme and our adoptive kids. Edward, who all of a sudden buried his nose in my hair for a second. Rosalie, Alice, Jasper, Rosalie Emmett and Bella. My colleague Nikki and school friend Eric. You have not changed a piece. Charles Yulee stated. I am satisfied you're still alive and nicely. Carlyle replied. We stood there for an awkward second before Billy allowed us in. Have there been any infected? Carlyle asked. Some, however they were treated, as well as any probable infected by them. Charles answered. We've few survivors from Forks. Is it as terrible as they say? We nodded. Charlie, Billy requested. I shook my head. Well, happy something made it. Reputedly the military had arrived about 32 hours ago and worked speedy to arrange the rest to their liking. Supposedly there would be a boat arriving at the shore quickly to take us to a secured metropolis, as they stated. The Quileutes, although, were attempting to inform them that this become their home and failed to want to be relocated again, once in history became sufficient. They could respect some substances but could make do, stay and die here, identical for the wolf percent. We stated we'd assist, however weren't positive we might live. We defined we had been going as much as Alaska to keep as an awful lot of the anima there for meals, what we knew so far, that the zombies had been fast and hypersensitive like animals, and informed them approximately the inflamed vampire we noticed. They heeded our warning and stated they might not ever send one in all their personnel to scout the wooded area again lest they encounter one or get inflamed. There are vampires all over, and if a horde of zombies unearths you, they may both weigh down you or lead some nomadic vampires to you that do feed on humans. Those vampires could revert lower back to a greater animalistic country as human beings end up tougher to locate an institution up to be able to capture more humans and live on. Additionally, the police pressure in Forks was absolutely decimated, leaving the encircling place without safety against human gangs, each people who formed to live on and those criminal. And each willing to kill. A number of the bodies we located have been deaths resulting from different people. I respect your selection to stay, however I don't suggest it ultimately. There are few Quileutes left and I believe protective your tribe's lineage is more crucial, particularly the form-shifting gene now more than ever. The elders, Billy, Charles, Sue, and Vintage Quill nodded. We are able to take it daily, Antique Quill stated, but the treaty remains intact. No exposure right here, or feeding, he stated, looking at me. They do not. I began but sighed and nodded. They gave the Cullens blankets to cowl themselves when we have been out and approximately. I learned that vampires and wolves stink to every other and it was painful enough that there has been no manner we should stay beneath one roof. The solar had risen for the reason that we arrived. The Cullens draped their blankets over their heads to keep from glittering. Things regarded to be searching up no matter having lost a lot and having to leave the res in the back of. They still do not agree with you feed on animals, not human beings. I said aloud. We moved into the tent we were directed to which become on the seashore. We sat across the vicinity of the tent particular to us even as Alice lay limp in Jasper's palms. Being in a closed room with up to 10 feet stinky, wolves irritated her headache. Perhaps with time they will. Carlyle stated. I controlled to cover my mouth in time for a yawn. The three of you should doze off, Esme stated. I don't need to overlook anything, I mumbled. You may not, I heard her say before I conked out. I woke up after a 2-hour strength nap at the same time as the others nevertheless slept. So this is your first time in Los Angeles push given that approximately a century in the past. It's been a long time on account that we have visible the seashore. Esme said with a grin. I agreed along with her that it was high quality. The air changed into saturated with the fragrance of the ocean. I were given an awesome whiff of it after I took a deep breath. It was right down over there that Jacob spilled the beans and I discovered out about you men. I stated, pointing farther down the beach. The res become actually small, so small we have been without problems packed into these tents. There has been miles and miles of seaside on either aspect till you made it to the Macaw State inside the northeast corner of Washington. I and the others, like Lauren and Jessica, got along higher. Stroll with me, Edward stated. I tensed. Ultimate time you stated which you had been gone. I mentally kicked myself for no longer stopping the one's phrases from popping out. It's only a stroll this time. I stuck close to him as we walked. He seemed to be taking part in seeing the seaside. What did you men do on the beach ride? Not anything. Simply hiked to the tide swimming pools and sat round a campfire speak me to the natives. The fireplace glowed blue due to the salt water that soaked into the driftwood. And also you weren't scared. About no. It simply explained the whole lot so now not truly. In which have been you? Brazil. Sounds first rate. I scoffed. It wasn't a holiday. He stopped me. I did it due to what occurred that night. I failed to need my brother or everybody to unexpectedly lose control, or myself. I didn't need something to occur to you. I do not have a trouble with that. It's now not having a desire that I've a problem with. You had no proper to make that decision. You compelled them to go away. You may have performed something you wanted however no longer lead them to depart. You have no idea what you've accomplished. They're the handiest real circle of relatives I ever had. I really like my mother and father, they did what they may and I don't care that Renee decided to go away. However that doesn't mean I failed to want a circle of relatives, and also you took that from me. I advised him. Same with my mortality. It's my selection no longer yours. I didn't have the choice of being born or no longer. I don't have a good deal desire in whatever in any respect, however my loss of life need to be mine. He gripped my shoulders. Are you saying you desired to die? If I need to be a vampire then I should be. I stated searching away. He became quiet for a moment. You don't have any idea what you are pronouncing. There you move again. You do not. You can by accident kill innocent people. You must kill animals for the relaxation of your lifestyles. Ought to you definitely stay with that. I would do something for all time with you. He grabbed my face so he should kiss me however instead hugged me. I've killed people. I understand. And also you do not care. No, even though they weren't bad people, I nevertheless wouldn't care. It's not like you enjoyed it. He rested his head on my shoulder. I do want you to be with me forever. I understand. He huffed a small laugh. You are a cussed fool, you masochist. However, I bet it truly is why I'm right here. He caressed my cheek with his lips, the tip of his nose stroked mine. I wanted the past to be done over, to forget the heart-wrenching pain, but at the same time I had him here. I wasn't going to let go, or let him go. I grabbed his face and kissed him hard. I wasn't going to let him leave without a valid reason, valid in my opinion, ever. He hugged me close to him, feeling the curves of my back and sides. We were told the National Guard would arrive on the shores in 3 days. We all rejoiced. The Cullens took advantage of being able to be on the beach, who knows when we'll see it in our home again. They took walks, played soccer amongst themselves or with the children from the res under the cover of clouds, and went swimming. Though I was too uncoordinated for soccer, I was able to swim with them. It was amazing, holding on to Edward's back as he swam at his speed. It was like riding a dolphin. It was so serene, we could even forget what we have seen and lost before having to return to hell. 3 days later, ew, she's kissing it. I heard a boy say. Edward stopped, growled lowly. Don't call him an it. I told Paul. Whatever. The soldiers are saying we gotta round up. Without any more words, he led the way. Edward and I slung our bags onto our shoulders. We'll just tell them politely we want to go our own way. Edward told me and took my hand. The Quileute reservation wasn't large at all, not in the slightest. Its entire population and the few survivors from Forks, including us, easily fit into the little square the soldiers made. There were archer posts where soldiers with big rifles stood at the ready at all corners and more on the ground, keeping us in this designated area, plus a helicopter flying overhead. This isn't right, the Cullens seemed to be thinking the same thing. Is there anyone missing? One shouted loudly into a megaphone. No one claimed that there was a loved one or friend missing. I saw one of them talk into a radio and jet plane zoomed into view, having come from the horizon on the sea. I looked to the nearest soldier. I thought, run. I hear the clattering of cans as it flew overhead and suddenly there was eye-watering white smoke all around us. Screams erupted and everyone ran in different directions. Someone grabbed my hand and looking up, I saw it was Edward. Cover your face. I did what he said using my free arm and screamed when my feet left the ground. He pulled me to his chest so I was reverse piggyback. The white fog glowed yellow. It was a bright sunny day. Then it was orange with gunfire. Cars blew up. The screams are louder. People fell but they were running just fine. I can't hear. Nothing but gunfire. Then rustling of leaves. It was gone. Nothing but forest. But I can still hear it. Some crying was louder. Was it me? No. Eric and Nikki. Groaning. Who's hurt? There's a soldier in Jasper's arms. What's happening? Whimpering. Wolves. Jacob. Quill. Eric. Nikki. Rosalie. Esme. Carlisle. Jasper. Alice. Edward. They were horrified. My teeth clattered. The man screamed unintelligibly. Don't stop. We kept running. Smoke rose a mile behind us. We stopped when I could hear the rushing of water. A river. Jasper laid down the man. He was the one who yelled out to run. Everyone else fell to the floor. Jacob growled loudly at the bleeding man. Stop it, Jasper yelled. Carlisle went to the man, checked his leg and tied his scarf around it robotically, gave him painkillers that we stole, going through the motions. He asked him to follow his finger but sounded slightly distant. Looking back, Esme cried into Rosalie who only had an arm around her and a blank face. Alice, Nikki, Eric, and Quill cried next to them. Why is there water on my face? Just a flesh wound. What's happening? Jasper growled. I was only told it was an evacuation. Evacuation my ass. Emmett screamed. Shish. Jasper hushed. What were your orders? To round people up? I didn't know. I wouldn't have done anything if I did. I looked down and see Edward's navy sleeves wrapped around me. He looked over my soul to the ground as if in shock. Ed Ward. I only know what they were going to do after evac. The man continued. It was containment of the infected. Then sterilization and then reintegration. There were other missions. Evacs did happen. I don't know. They're going to kill us. Eric cried. We've all seen it, it's in all the movies. Fuck 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 fuck. Quill whimpered as if he were hurt. Jacob talked to him, trying to calm him the best he could. We don't have time. Edward Said. Edward. He pressed my head to his chest. Let's move. We'll follow the river to Port Angeles. Jasper said, and pulled the man up. Jacob, I need you to carry them, he said, referring to Eric and Nikki. Billy, so I'm not hallucinating. Wolves. And we're vampires, Jasper said, pulling it off like Band-Aid. Shit. Faint and we'll think you're dead and leave you. We all got up, unlocking our joints, and started up again. Jasper carried the man on his back. He was young, younger than 30. Eric and Nikki were carried by a depressed Jacob. I piggybacked on Edward as well and the others followed. Hey, he's paler, I said. He's not dead yet, Jasper said after a quick look. We don't eat humans. Edward Said to the still nameless man. We ran close to the river, a few feet from it, hiding in the trees in case the helicopters were searching for people. We could still hear explosions behind us. I didn't understand. Why would they want to kill us? Was Forks unsalvageable? Were we all infected somehow? We couldn't be. After a few hours we couldn't hear anything. No bombs or the chopping sound from helicopter blades, but we didn't slow down. After a few more hours and going around the small community of Elwha, we made it to edge of Port Angeles. Port Angeles was over 5 times more populated than Forks, which increased the chances of running into hordes, but at least it decreased the chances of seeing a zombified Mike or any of the others. I missed them. We kept to the patches of trees just in case. From there I could see the place was as trashed as Forks was and empty. Or was it? Should we call out a warning? No, considering what our group was made up of, it was best to stay away from everyone else. We ran out of patches as we closed in on the marina. We stopped and Jasper slowly laid the man back down, but he still groaned in pain. Do we take a boat or go around? Rosalie asked, covering her mouth and nose with her hand. I'm not sure, Carlyle said, sounding stressed. He worked fast, changing the gauze he bled through. The Canadian Army might be protecting its borders, keeping the infection out. Jasper thought out loud. You mean they'll try to kill us? Eric asked in a high-pitched voice. I highly doubt their hospitality extends this far. I can't see anything from here. Edward Said. We should try and hope we strike luck. It'll take longer if we go around. Only one should go. If there's anyone there, they'll see us if we all go. Lines are down, Rosalie commented. I caught her putting her phone away. Jacob still whined. Should I be crying too? I'll do it, Emmett said. Before anyone else could say anything he took off running. It's only 10 blocks away. Edward reassured Rosalie, who was going to run after him. I let him go. I shouldn't have let him go, Jacob said through his teeth. He was quickly covered with a blanket. Esme kept it tight around him and he didn't push her away. There wasn't anything any of us could have done. None of us were expecting that, she said softly. Jacob had his hands on the handles of the wheelchair, set in front of him, ready to push him up a ramp to safety, to a future where hopefully they were reunited with his sisters. Now that and his mother's grave were gone, I felt sad. Here was my son, no longer shining bright. I've only ever seen him happy and silly. I crawled over and laid a hand on his shoulder. He turned and sobbed into my chest. I sat still as tears slowly filled my eyes. How could I be the big sister when I was an orphan too? I sobbed and rocked him. Quill came and phased back, and cried into Jacob's shoulder. How could I be the big sister of 2 orphans? My mind began to flash the faces of everyone I knew, who made me one of them when Edward was gone, those of who I just met, talked with before. They were the only ones who could keep us company when we had to keep the secret. Now they were turned to ashes, blown away by the wind. Absolutely gone. Emmett was back before long. There was a Coast Guard station right in front of the marina in this area and the Army had made a base out of it. There could be another camp here, soldiers roaming the place. Port Angeles could be next. It was said we would go through the islands east of here, onto the mainland and cross the border on foot to stay off of the U.S. Army's radar. It would take about 5 hours, maybe less. With Edward's special ability we could avoid people. It was as trashed as Forks was. We raided a house here and there to add to our food. Without thinking twice I swallowed a can of corn. I had to make Jacob and Quill eat a few, It was less than what they usually ate. They claimed to not be hungry, but they ate something at least. We would have to constantly replenish our stock. We only took beans or canned meat. The high protein content made up for the space it took in our bags. We kept heading east in a straight line and any zombies were dealt with swiftly. Jacob took the bat strapped to Nikki's backpack and eagerly took part. There were schools here, and in a highly populated area there were many youth. Jasper took care of them for Jacob. The other Cullens still had trouble doing it but were able to kill them in one swing. These run-ins inspired us to go faster each time. It got dark quickly. Half our day gone by the time we arrived here, covering 12 hours travel in 6. To save time, any time, we swam through Squim Bay and continued on to Discovery Bay, which we swam through too, a quick dinner in between. The sun was beginning to set but still there were many strips of land water to get through and, still, the mainland to cross. It would take another 5 hours to get to the mainland. There we could get a car and drive close to the border and sneak through via the forest there. It would be the last hour of urgency. Hopefully, as soon as we made it to Everett on the mainland, we changed into dry clothes and crammed ourselves into a tinted window van and started driving north. When we got close to the border, we went back on foot to hide amongst the trees. There was a wire fence with signs that warned it was illegal to cross but we jumped over it into Canada. You should have Lieutenant me carry you. Edward Said, checking my hands. They were scraped and a little dirty. There are some things I should do myself, I think. I responded. Things would have been better if Canada wasn't already infected. What if what they reported to be a new flu strain or rampant cold was really the zombie virus? In a country so big there could be well over 100 big airports and a few smaller ones. Virus heaven. America had already begun to sterilize. Was Canada planning on the same? I didn't want to believe any country did this on purpose. Driving up, the amount of clear fields increased and continued in, what I guessed to be, British Columbia. All we needed to do was keep going north and make a left turn and bam, we were minutes from Denali. Edward had made the trip in a day, so easy peasy, right? We'd be back in US territory, but I was sure we'd figure something out. Just one more day. I attempted no longer to make a sound when I yawned as we walked diagonally through Arnold, aiming for purchasing far away from the border and into a residence where we might sleep for the night. It changed into still a bit early, best round 8 p.m., but we were worn out and the soldier were moved around an excessive amount of already. Arnold become a small cluster of houses surrounded by means of yards. Too open, and this Chirac Eric of British Columbia failed to seem to quit as a long way as I could see. We stopped at a one-tail residence with a surrounding porch that was an amazing distance far away from other homes and the closest motorway. It turned into empty, though Edward did point out that not too far from here turned into a bigger organization. I already knew we'd stay far from them, to avoid drawing attention, like how large covens including the Cullens drew undesirable attention from the Volturi, the unofficial government or justice machine of the vampire population, if you will, just to be secure. The soldier was quickly laid down on the couch. He become so out of it that his scream of pain came out in a moan. All we had turned into Tylenol and it handiest made the ache bearable for him. We should get something stronger. We've already given him the maximum quantity in 24 hours. I watched Carlyle and Jasper assist him. Esme went to the kitchen to get a massive bowl and handled the tap water with chlorine simply in case. He had to go through the water like us and his wounds should get infected, slowing the recovery process. I dropped my bag onto the ground and rested my sore returned against the wall like everybody else did. You have to all bathe as properly, Esme said. I'll put together the water. Nobody answered. Esme did as she said. Edward started brushing my hair along with his arms. You must be tired, sporting me for almost 12 hours now. I informed him. He shook his head with a ghost of a smile. I leaned in to check his eyes. You want to feed quickly. Your eyes are darkening. Should be all the exercise. Esme returned and Eric stated, ladies first. I informed Nikki to go earlier than me and checked on Jacob and Quill even as Rosalie attempted stepping into contact with the Denalis again. You men hungry? They shook their heads. Irina, Rosalie stated fortuitously. The Denalis were building a wall around their house, the usage of the trees they took down, with plans to do the same to the mountain itself and the use of the region to elevate cattle. The Denali sisters were from a time in which farming turned into something every family did to survive in what's now the United Kingdom, and left when they have been followed via a couple, Eleazar and Carmen, to be some distance from the Volturi. They'd killed their mother, her punishment for developing immortal children who did not have the mental potential to restrain themselves and their hunger for blood. Edward had informed me they have been lucky to had been spared. It become right information, for positive. Whilst Nicky lower back I had my turn and waited till Jacob and Quill had their turns. I'd bunk with Nicky in one bedroom and the boys might proportion the second one. The third being reserved for the Cullens. Good day, Jake. He did not reply, however I knew what he desired to mention. We've usually been circle of relatives, and we usually will be. All people now, you will see. I ended on the door, but there wasn't anything else I should say to hire the scenario and left it at that. I went into my bedroom, pulled my pants off, no pajamas, and crawled into the other facet of the bed. Lying in it, warming up after hours in the cold, with the fluffy pillow and comforter felt pretty accurate, but I could not go to sleep proper away, the urgency of leaving the U.S.A. become nonetheless there. I tore the guidelines of my nails away. I hadn't clipped them so that they grew into claws on account that. At one point I rolled over and so did Nicky. She hadn't fallen asleep in any case. We seemed away from each other and returned after a moment. Take me sleep, I'm tired. At breakfast we handed around the can opener as Jasper started the verbal exchange of what we were going to do next and inside the foreseeable destiny, taking fee. Why do not we take the toll road? Eric requested. Until this vicinity was evacuated in advance of time, the highway is going to be blocked by means of collided motors, and it will be a goal for different survivors, no doubt. We will go strolling in through the mountains. Would not absolutely everyone else have idea of that and be doing the same aspect? Edward asked. Of course a few have. Who died and made you? Eric stopped brief. Hello. None of us need to fight. We all agreed to visit Alaska. It doesn't count number what course we take so long as we don't lose all and sundry else, and combating is not going to help us do that, so are we able to simply get on with it? Nicky said with a wavering voice. We're all suffering to come to phrases with what has transpired up to now, Carlyle said. I ought to sense Jasper the use of his capability. But we should not permit it come among us, as a substitute help every other through it. We're going to make sure we all make it, yes. Anyone nodded. Maintain. I had to evacuate humans myself once after I served within the Navy when I used to be human. All of us on this vicinity have a fair amount of information of surviving within the wooded area, so it is possible that some will have entered but not in this place. It isn't huge sufficient. And we all have heightened hearing, so if there are human beings, we will listen them earlier than they see us. What approximately that man? We all regarded over and the soldier had craned his neck to see us from the sofa. You're leaving me? No. We're just discussing a plan. Carlyle explained. No guy left in the back of. Jasper quoted. Esme moved quickly over with water and painkillers. That explains things. What is your call, son? Carlyle requested. Brent. I'm from Maryland. Precise to fulfill you. I stitched you up. The bleeding appears to have stopped, however shifting you round may want to exacerbate the wound. However, we are in a piece of a hurry. I'm able to manage the ache. Brent scarfed down his breakfast, angrily I assume. Do not rush yourself, Esme said kindly. So you're all headed to Alaska, huh? Brent requested. You are greater than welcome to come with us. Carlyle said. Edward coughed. I'm sorry, approximately your family. Jasper said. They aren't useless. Brent spoke back tensely. If I hurry, I will make it lower back to Maine before. He stopped short and we remained silent. Proper now you are scared and certainly now not inside the right frame of thoughts. Jasper began. On top of that, you are some distance from being in appropriate condition. That wound is going to take as a minimum 2 months to heal. Brent's annoying expression melted into one among defeat. Your sister can see the destiny though. Spouse. However no, she has to have met them at the least as soon as a good way to see their destiny. We have to get going. We need to cover as a great deal ground as possible at some point of the day. Rosalie stated. Would not night time be higher? Eric asked. Possibly. Other people may want to move for the duration of the day in place of night. Edward spoke back. I think proper now we need to worry approximately painkillers. We are low and we didn't have a great deal in the first area. Nicky interjected. There ought to be every other town an hour from right here. Edward stated. We may be able to find loads more resources there. May as nicely in case we decided to make camp for a few days. Carlisle, Edward, Nicky and I'm able to cross. Jasper said. The rest of you lay low. He and Carlisle kissed their better halves, and Edward kissed my head, before leaving with emptied backpacks. The rest people gave each other a flat smile when they have been long past. What will we do now? Had been you always deliberating following him anywhere he is going? Jacob requested tersely. Anywhere he and Cullens went, in the event that they'd have me. Esme smiled at me in reaction. Then you definitely at ease with being frozen in time, never growing up, transferring on, having children, or getting married, in case you do not, accidentally, kill someone. I stared for a second, unsure a way to solution except in anger. You could have all of that if you were with a human. I got out of my seat. I don't need to argue with you. But no one else can take that vicinity. I understand what I'll be giving up, and I understand they'll hold me from hurting someone. Youngsters, Rosalie stated. If I need a baby I will undertake one. I said. She checked out me in disgust. You have no concept what you have got. She growled lowly. I recognize what I need and what I refuse to depart without. Esme started out stroking her hair and he or she slowly returned from me. I decided to go upstairs for a while, and willed my coronary heart to relax. Rosalie was frightening, intimidating all of the time, however I understand why now. Nonetheless, I'm now not crazy approximately children, she shouldn't dislike me so much. I went up right here just to escape from the anxiety, but there was not anything to do. I stopped up tidying up the rooms and amassing what changed into left in them that became ours. The mountains that I may want to see from the boys' room struck my eye earlier than I left the room. It wasn't very far away, however, likely out of our manor. There had been some bushes at the floor surrounding the mountains, but it seemed like bushes from this distance. After scanning the place for a couple of minutes, I commenced feeling uneasy and pulled the curtains across, and did that for all the rooms and closed the doorways too. At the manor down the stairs I heard Brent and Eric talking to the final Cullens about their lives up till now. Are you okay, Bella? Esme asked once I got here back. Yeah. I dived into folding the clothes in my fingers and taking notes on what we had in our inventory on a few desk bound I had located to attempt to loosen up my thoughts. There weren't any undead out there, however, still. Most probable there had been wherein Edward and the others had gone, however it's why Edward went along proper. Wait, then it's possible he has to bear hearing the ones things moan. Brains, in their heads. They will be high quality, I'm not worried. Esme started out cleansing up too, and Alice and Rosalie went to the lower back of the residence to break out from the wolves' stench, I guessed. I was accomplished with my distraction quite fast, so the following hour and a half or so became uninteresting. I began form of pacing whilst that point exceeded, and they were not lower back but no longer lengthy once they back. It's like a goldmine there, Nicky exclaimed. We observed a Costco and Starbucks, and that I wager there's hundreds greater. She quickly took out a bottle of painkillers and handed it to Brent, who did not conceal his alleviation. Optimistically, we run into greater locations like that, but we did get a few bags of seeds and espresso for future use. Edward stated. To grow stuff? I requested. Sure, he stated with a grin. I have never grown something myself both. We have to start heading out now, Jasper said. Here, it is chillier right here, Edward stated, and exceeded around thicker jackets they found. With the ones on and out backpacks strapped on, we moved out. Brent did try to get the Cullens to allow him stroll so no person had to deliver him, but reluctantly let himself be carried by Emmett. We did, however, had to have Jacob and Quill continue to be in their human shape. Who recognize how others would react? It got us thinking we need to exchange our napping agenda so we could cover greater floor quicker. How long will it take, do you suspect? I whispered to Edward. Let's wish we can power maximum of the manor, or it's going to take 10 months taking walks if we cowl 6 miles an afternoon. Holy shit, I gasped. We brisk walked across the green plain to Highway 99. 8 lines of cars sat on the road, interrupted here and there by little pile-ups or a charred car. The last 4 were on the lane for cars coming down from the north, but I supposed everyone wanted to get out and overlook the law. We climbed over hoods, jumped from roof to roof, looking around to see if there were any heads popping out of anywhere to see us. We ran into the forest, heading for the river a mile or two from here, where we could catch fish. Seasoning didn't matter. Meat. I wasn't sure if it was just in my head, but I felt a little off physically. I was thinking it was the lack of meat, but maybe my body was adjusting to the apocalypse diet. The plan was to have lunch here and jump across the river atop a vampire's or werewolf's back. When I saw it, it looked too wide to me. Turning to Edward, I saw he had the same pensive look on his face. We'll have to go around. It'll take longer, but, I nodded. We'll do it. Using fishing lines and a few hooks we found at the last house, Jacob, Quill, Eric and Emmett fished for sturgeon, using branches as rods. While they did that, Carlisle looked after Brent. Edward and Jasper studied maps to find the fastest and safest way to Denali, and the rest of us made a fire, collected and washed sticks to grill the fish with. "How are you holding up?" I asked Alice as we skewered the fish. "I'm numb," she said with a flat smile. It must be merely bearable, but at least she hadn't gone half crazy or seriously sick. "I'm thinking I might be able to work around it now." "Well, maybe only for emergencies," I responded. "I know Jasper is thinking about you when he's working hard. I haven't seen the Major in years." She laughed her tinkling laugh as she would normally. "But I do wish I could read his mind." I helped cook the fish, flipped them from time to time, while I fed the already cooked ones to the wolves. It was like feeding seals. One fish was one mere bite to them and it was down the hatch the next second. I couldn't help but laugh. In that moment, it felt so great having a group of people in the know of the supernatural world. Emmett suddenly stood up and stomped to me side of our setup, Jasper and Edward beside him. "Someone's here," Emmett said. 10. Edward added. "I heard twigs breaking not far from us but too deep for me to see who it was, though I was sure the others could." Edward and Emmett looked through trees at our sides, Jasper seeming to be staring directly at them. "Aboriginals," Jacob said. "Do you know them?" Carlisle asked. Jacob shook his head. "Edward," Jasper prompted. "They're definitely not friendly. Everyone get ready." Edward sighed. We all scrambled to get our things together, our catch now burning. They burst out of the tree line, surrounding us, pointing their rods with pointed ends, torches and hunting rifles at us. The Cullens stepped back and the rest of us put up our hands. Some wear Caucasian or other shades of brown, but the natives honestly looked no different from Jacob and Quill. Looking back, they stood still in their wolf form, prepared to fight off the hostiles, exposure being the least of our problems. "What are you?" the leader asked, voice wavering slightly in fear. His gaze, like the others, flashed from the wolves to the pale faces standing in front. Those with torches waved them at the beautiful people, and those with guns cocked them. We raised our hands higher, but I didn't think they cared. I could tell they were determined. Maybe even insane from it. Edward's eyes flickered to me. If any of us moved, we would riddled with holes and set on fire still. "Don't try anything," the man yelled. "Your magic caused this plague." He yelled at the wolves. What's he talking about?" Eric cried. "The hostiles weren't stable. They were constantly shifting. If their trigger finger twitches the wrong way." Jacob huffed. "They're macaw, north of La Push. They never liked the Quileutes for their werewolf gene and made a treaty with them that said the Quileutes could never set foot in their territory." The leader gasped. "It reads minds." My body's sporadic breathing was making me lightheaded. The bullets in their guns rattled loudly in the silence. "Wait, please," Carlisle begged. "If we're trespassing we mean no harm." "They really believe we're from hell," Quill said, as if there was no hope. "You're coming with us," the leader growled. "Let's go." The people he brought closed in on us, making a circle, and tightening around us. Everyone sidestepped to the nearest vampire. Edward and I found each other's hands. "Now move." Slowly, my head snapped to my side when the rattling was right at my ear. It was one of the macaw. He stared into my eyes intensely. I almost felt like I did do something wrong. He was prepared to kill me. Before I could utter a word, my arm was pulled and I fell into step with the others. I bit my lip to keep from crying, but it wasn't helping. Looking up, Edward's lips moved quickly, no sound coming out. "The Cullens would find a way out. Act like you're our prisoners," Edward murmured. "Shut up," one of them yelled. I wasn't sure what they were thinking or how to act like a prisoner. Plus I'm a terrible liar. I craned my neck to look behind me. Jacob and Quill were still in their werewolf forms, too stressed out to be able to revert back. I noticed it was activated by fear. Jacob shifted to save Nikki, and Quill during the sterilization of Lapush. I wonder if they hit Forks too. We were led back to where we came, to their own little settlement, a safe distance from the highway but not too far. It was impressive compared to our group's current status. They had tents, a pile of supplies that most likely included a nice stash of food and a fire. Let's just kill them now. One cried. He was one of those who held a stake in a tight grip. The Cullens hissed. Please help us, Nikki begged. There were already tears in her eyes and the sincerity threw me off for a second. Please, I don't want to be dog food, Eric cried. Please, please, please. I added. They started looking at each other and we cried louder. Shut up. The 7 of you, move. The leader pointed at the Cullens with his gun and jerked it to the right to direct them where. His friends led them to the left of the camp. You 4, over there. The others said thank yous as we sidestepped to the right. Jacob and Quill were whimpering like puppies and I didn't want to leave them. We'll find out your secrets, beasts. And we'll end your abominable existence. The leader shouted. Metal chains clattered loudly. Yeah, the others shouted. Hurry up, said one of those that led us away. We stopped at a cage made of planks of wood where they tied our wrists behind our backs with boat rope before pushing us into it. We groaned in pain, the planks on the bottom digging into our flesh. At least they were gentler with Brent. Hopefully the Cullens got the same. I don't think anyone witnessed their strength. Hopefully they can break through metal. I couldn't even think about losing them. I couldn't, it was my job to keep them safe. As soon as the door was locked, they stepped away but positioned themselves around us, already standing guard. They have a plan, right? Eric whispered. They'll save them in time. Of course, but we should be ready to run. It'll give them one less thing to worry about. We just run north and swerve a few steps to the right to get back and get our stuff. Even if don't get to it, we can handle one night on our own. Besides, they'll find us before morning. So the world is more complicated. Nikki said. You don't know the half of it. For a while we heard unintelligible shouting. Sometimes I knew what they were saying, which meant they were poking the wolves. Jacob and Quill barked in response. They were demanding answers. How many were there? What would kill them, etc. As if to give them some time to ponder, they turned to us, asking from where did the vampires take us, how long were we captive, what did they do to us? It was easy to base it off truth. We came from Forks, all of us, and the vampires came from out of town. We asked them the same questions he was asking us and they answered with smirks on their faces, a form of playing with their food. They caught us when we were running from the massive wildfire and gunning. We acted like we had no idea what it was about. If you're macaw then you were close. The leader clenched his jaw then asked us about the wolves. They were. I shouldn't have said anything, I didn't come up with anything to say. He stared at me intensely for the answer. I had to know it. God, I'm so hungry. They were, attacking us. For food. They're mortal enemies. They were about to fight. Eric added. They would have eaten us too. Nikki sighed. Please sir, we haven't had anything to eat. Couldn't we please have a little? We really don't have anything to do with them. We'll be on our way as soon as you let us go. I begged. He pushed himself off the ground and discussed with his colleagues if we could be trusted, let out. Were we telling the truth? It seemed like it. We did seem a little friendly with the monsters, though. But the boys questioned back then. It's possible he really didn't know what was going on, that none of us did. We were all trapped. We weren't defending them and we were sticking to our story. We also didn't have their strange eyes or look to be part of the Quileute tribe. Please, 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 I chanted in my head. If we were let out, that could be our only chance. At last they agreed to free us temporarily to eat what they were comfortable sparing to us, but they weren't done with us yet. We thanked them profusely and followed them to the fire in the center of their settlement, helping Brent limp there. I immediately looked for any guns nearby. None seemed to have one and the rifles were piled next to the supply pile a couple feet from the center. Jacob and Quill were stuck to trees with a lock and chains. Jacob's big eyes followed mine as we were pushed to one of the logs around the fire. As thick soup from the pot beside the fire was ladled into unmatching, well-used Tupperware, I told the others not to eat it just in case. I couldn't tell if they were tampering with the food with their backs obscuring my view. We kept our calm as new people served it to us while looking at us as if we were infected by the wolves or vampires. We stirred the soup as if preparing to eat it as the leader started shouting out the story of when the macaw encountered the Quileute spirit warriors long ago, and how they were right in keeping them away, and that they'll set things right today. The others banged the ends of their rods into the ground and shouted their support in response. Jacob growled and Quill howled. I don't remember much of the Salem witch trials from class, but this seemed too similar. Come on, Edward, I breathed through still lips. We'll run back to the river, just save them in time. The leader lit his with the fire and turned back to them. I threw my bowl like a frisbee at him. They reacted and I grabbed a log and threw it at the leader, the others already running towards us. A blur rushed to all of them at once and I saw fists fly. Run, I screamed. We split up, running around and into the forest. I heard loud crunching and pounding behind me like the beat of a horse's gallop but faster. Jacob and Quill burst through the shrubs and I flinched as Jacob jumped to my side with a bark. I grabbed a fistful of his flesh at his neck and pulled myself onto his back. Where are the others? I shouted. Jacob barked. I don't speak werewolf. I looked behind me. They'll be fine though. After a while, Jacob and Quill had to slow down. They might have been faster than vampires, but they didn't have the same endurance. You guys okay? Jacob huffed. Quill gave a softer one. I patted their shoulders. None of us were expecting to deal with that. We'll just be wary of other natives and figure out a way to help you guys keep from shifting. Close to the river, everyone was there through the trees. We came out of the right side of our camp. Edward looked at me and nodded at Jacob. I quickly noticed his hand and jumped off. When I got closer, I smelled the scent of sweet incense. Edward, it's nothing. What do you mean it's nothing? You got burned. His hand was slightly melted, the waves a golden brown color. Does it hurt? Carlyle came and started to wrap it in gauze. But I noticed his eyes were pitch black again. Carlyle's were still a dark gold. Not anymore. It will heal, he said, clenching his jaw. You need to be extremely careful, Edward. Until it heals itself or it will snap off. Carlyle said. Why isn't it healing now? I asked. The healing process is slower with animal blood. On top of that, we would need lots of it. It would be faster if he had human blood. Carlyle explained. No, it's my decision. It's mine as well. I almost killed you last time. But you didn't. I'm not taking the risk. But I am. It's only a little and Carlyle's here. Edward closed his eyes and huffed. Later. We have to keep moving. We will continue in next part.